Hello, assalamu alaikum, namaste, sat sri akal. My name is Farheen Khan and you're watching the Azeeza show. So the last few shows we've, talked about women and some of the challenges that they face. We talked about violence, we've talked about the prevalence of violence, whether it be sexual or domestic. We talked about forced marriages. And the last show, we talked about women and their stories. We talked about, their courage, their resilience, and some of the incredible work that women are doing to really express themselves. And so this show, I'm really excited to have two of our guests, Shazia Javed and Nikki Clark. And I want to really talk to these two women because you've also been doing some really incredible things in your lives. And so, part of the conversation in our last show was, women were using different methods or ways to express themselves. So be it, an academic who decided her work was, to be able to be a Muslim woman and a writer, to really express, the views of being a woman as opposed to having others sort of speak for her. Or we had, this remarkable young woman, Niqabi, who's been using art to be able to inspire people online. So why don't we just sort of jump right into it and we can start to talk about what is it that you've been through and sort of how did you come to be the women that you are today? And it's a really big question, but do you want to start, Shazia?
Sure. Well, as you said, that is a big question. I think every little thing you experience kind of goes into making you the person that you are. And I'm a filmmaker, and most of my films are centered around the narrative from within my own community. And I think that's, for me, came from the fact that while growing up, I come from a family where my parents put a lot of emphasis on education, and they wanted us to be able to be self-independent people. But yet at the same time, we were growing up in a society where there were time and again spaces that we didn't have access to. Like as a girl, you don't have access to this certain space, or a certain subject is just taboo for you. You're not allowed to even have an opinion about something. Or you can't go out on your own after a certain hour in the evening. Or you can't go to a certain space without a male chaperone because it's just not safe for you. And I think it gets to the point where you say, okay, enough. You decide to step out of that box and say, no, I have things to say. I have things to do, and I cannot be contained in it anymore. And I think it was just that process. I started writing. I remember way back when I was much younger, I started writing letters to the editor, to the newspaper on various subjects. And then gradually that led to me writing articles until I stumbled upon filmmaking, and I realized, wow, this is such a great medium which brings together so many other art forms, and you can reach such a big audience through it. So I think that's what kind of led to it.
Amazing, thank you. And Nikki?
Well, I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to be on the other side of the couch, so to speak. Farheen,
we've been on the other side
we've been on the, yes. So this is wonderful, and congratulations for what you're doing. But I think my story starts coming to Canada as an immigrant child, moving from Jamaica to what my young parents knew of the land of milk and honey. And they came with this new promise back in 1970, Montreal being the port of entry for West Indian immigrants to experience this new opportunity. So when they came with this promise, they were really confused with the racial confrontation that they experienced, and my early childhood experiences were colored with that, having to deal with it head on, prepared me in many ways to know who I am. And I'm grateful for parents who were able to identify that if they didn't step in and intervene early, that my self-esteem would have been very critically compromised with what was happening. So I learned very early about my roots. I learned very early about who I was, my Jamaican history, and also what was going on in the States, the civil rights movement. I was actually watching it on TV as a child. So yes, I've told you how old I am. But this has brought me into an arena where I am a community worker. I have many slashes in my name. I'm an educator, I'm an author, I'm a media personality, and now I'm running for MPP for the Mississauga-Malton area NDP party. But it all means one thing, that I'm concerned about the welfare of people. And I am concerned for women, and I'm concerned also for members of the Black community. I share those two responsibilities. I take them very seriously. And I want to be able to be an inspiration for people who have been in those situations that I was in as a young child, and how to overcome. You can overcome any adversity. So this has been my raison d'être. This has been my reason for doing what I do. So going through my life, I had two very disciplinarian, academically driven parents who pushed education, very similar to Shazia's story, and they believed that there were only three things you could do: be a doctor, be a teacher, be an accountant. And so I chose the teacher route, and I did that. I loved it for some time, but there was still a whisper behind a lot of what I was doing, and the whisper got louder and louder. And I listened and I followed through, not knowing where that would lead, but I left teaching to start a talk show, and organically started on internet TV, and then it grew to TV. And the show started as And the Beat Goes On, helping to give artists in the Toronto area a place where they could showcase their talents. And then it changed to the Nikki Clark Show, and someone said, you must put your name there because you have to stop hiding who you are. And when I did that, I was forced to take my mask off, and I encourage people to share their authentic stories. And that means sharing all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I was terrified the very first show, but 9 years later, the show has blossomed into what it is now, and you came on and shared your beautiful story of transition and transformation. And then the show has been able to give people the courage to come out and share, and I'm just very happy to be in a position where I had a friend of mine who started a publishing company say, Nikki, you've got a lot of story behind you, why don't you publish it? So this past September 22nd, we published our book, Transforming Lives One Story at a Time, and I invited 25 co-authors to come in this anthology to go really deep and to share that pivotal time of transformation. And in my chapter, I spoke about my very graphic racial confrontations growing up in Montreal, but there's a happy ending. Because it's made me the woman I am, strong, and a woman who embraces diversity and teaches diversity, and to implore people to love themselves and love others, love their differences. That's my story.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, Shazia, you're also working on a film, and do you want to maybe share a little bit about that? I saw the image that really just really spoke to me.
So I have been working on this documentary film. It's a 54-minute film. It's called 3 Seconds Divorce. And basically we started working on it in 2014. And there's this practice, and although it's been abolished in many countries, but it's been continuing in India, where a Muslim man can just say the word talaq, which basically means divorce. So you can just say divorce, 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 and the divorce is done. So, and the woman has basically no authority, no agency to have any say in it, to stop it or do anything. And you have to understand the context of this. Like, this is also a society where women have not been given the education they need. They don't have access to employment opportunities. They're financially totally dependent on either the parents or on the husband. So what happens when this kind of a divorce takes place? The woman is just kind of thrown out of the house, sometimes with the kids at that very time. And then for the parents, they're just another mouth to feed. So it's been going on for a long time, and this is something that I wanted to address for the longest time ever, also because it then has, at some level, it challenges me to understand my faith better. And growing up, this was something I really struggled with until I had access to all this scholarship by various Islamic scholars like Asghar Ali Engineer or Amina Wadud or other people, and you realize that no, this is actually not part of faith. This is just a patriarchal practice that's been coming on for such a long time. So when I started making this film, I knew that I had to center the voice of the women who are working on the ground. So there are these Indian Muslim women who have been fighting for a ban on it, and they're caught up, obviously when they speak up, as I said, our voice is always suppressed. So there are these traditional patriarchal religious leaders who want to shut them down, and then there is Muslims being a minority, they are like this marginalized group. And then, there's always this fear, what if this spreads Islamophobia? So they're caught up in this fire. And lots been said about this, but for me, my job was to just give them a voice and tell the story from their perspective, and show them as the strong, inspirational women that they are, and not just going like from a, I'm going to save you and tell you a story perspective. And so the film is coming out.
Okay.
We are going to have a premiere on February 1 at Mumbai International Film Festival, and I'm really looking forward to it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So we have to take a quick break, and to our audience, stay with us. We have some, I want to continue the conversation with our remarkable guest here today, so we'll be back soon. Okay, welcome back. This is Farheen Khan, and you're with the Azeeza Show. And today we're talking to some really wonderful women, Shazia Javed and Nikki Clark, about their experiences being filmmakers, being TV hosts and authors. This is just so wonderful to know that we've got such powerful women in our communities that are, really using your voices and also creating the platforms for others to use their voices. So maybe we can just, let's jump right back into it. So what does it feel like to be, a filmmaker and a TV host? How has that transformed your life and the life of those that you've been able to, create these spaces for?
It feels exciting. And it also feels like a responsibility. So I know that it hasn't been easy just to step out of that zone and find this platform. Like for me, like even after I immigrated to Canada, it's always a challenge to continue in your own field. There's always that question, but where's the Canadian experience question that we are all asked? And then, all the hardships that you go through. So, I have had regular day jobs just to survive, but then I knew that this is something I wanted to do, and I continued with it. So, it took a lot of persistence just to keep at it. And I feel really glad that now the stories that I'm able to tell are centered inside out. Like the stories of my community is told from an inside perspective. Like I did a short film, Namrata, which was produced by the NFP. It's the story of an immigrant woman who was in an abusive relationship, but how she gets out of it, and now she's a police officer. And then, which is like the transforming stories that Nikki here was talking about as well. I did We Say No last year, a short video which gives voice to young Muslim women, and they share their experiences on lack of sexual health education. I did Can You Hear Me, which basically talks about how a Muslim woman is judged just on the basis of what she may or may not be wearing, how your voice may be suppressed. And 3 Seconds Divorce, it basically gives the credit where it belongs to the Muslim women who are working on the ground. So I'm quite conscious that I have been able to create that space for myself, and of course there are people who have helped me get here. And it does feel like, every time you pick up that camera, or every time you're behind that camera, you're interviewing someone, you know that this person has trusted you with their story, and you will frame it in a certain way, and then people will watch it. So it does, it does feel like, it does feel like a strength and responsibility at the same time, but it's also very fulfilling. I feel like it's really great that people who talk to me, they trust me, and it's really great that I have this skill, that I'm able to put together a team and just create this piece, this film from nothing. And so yeah, it's a wonderful experience, and I think I've only just begun, and there's lots more stories I want to tell.
For sure, no, and thank you for all that you're doing. It's quite amazing.
Thank you.
And Nikki?
Well, I share a lot of the sentiments that you have in terms of the responsibility. That's a core value for me. When I started the TV show, it was like a hobby. You know, it was something to address the creative side of me. But I realized later when it became full-time that yes, it was a duty to give back, and it was a platform for people to share, but it's also an opportunity for people to heal. The show is done in front of a live audience, which is a unique approach, and I've had people say, well, you don't need to do it, and I said, well, you know what, I do. Because as much as people want process right then and there in that element. So it's an incredible opportunity for me to come and see people blossom in front of my eyes. And then when they come back and they start their own TV shows and they're doing wonderful things from connections they're making from the show, that really warms my heart. And it encourages me that, yeah, I know I'm on the right track. And I have a lot of I'm a very spiritual woman. I believe that God guides me. So when you listen to that whisper, for me it was God. It was saying, you know, take that leap of faith. And I encourage people, that leap of faith is there for you. And sometimes you're not going to get the sponsors. You're not going to know how to put things together, but it will come into an alignment once you just say, it's okay, I'm going to do this in faith. And that's what I did, and I'm grateful for it. And the other part too is that being a black woman is something that I really watch for certain messages that are going out in the media, and the messages are still they're not as accurate as I would like them to be. Members of the black community are still perceived in the wrong light. So when I step out, I want people to understand who we are, what we are, and what we're about, and in a positive manner. So this is how the show has changed my life. This is how the book has changed my life, and one led to the other. In being able to be a public leader now, in a way to inspire and uplift and empower everyone, men, women of every community.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I mean, I know with you know, being on your show, like that was really transformational for me, was to be able to finally, you know, come out there and be like, look, I lost, you know, at the time it was like 170 pounds, I think. Now I think I'm at 250.
And you pulled out
you
jeans.
know, my huge jeans, right? And they could like hear the audience be like, oh
Gasp.
my gosh, right? There was this whole, yeah, exactly. Gasp was the word, you know, and that was really, really, you know, such a great moment for myself to really feel like I had accomplished something, and there were others out there who really appreciated that. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
And you know, I mean, I can only imagine all the other people who've been on that show with you, and you know, who've had a chance to really share their most authentic, you know, their authentic stories, right, of who they are, what they've been through, and just being able to kind of, you know, share that with the world. That's been amazing. And
it's kind of like releasing a demon that's been there for many years, haunting them. So with the sharing of the stories, it's a cathartic release.
Yeah.
So they're able to let go and to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I said, it's such an honor for me to see it happen, to be part of the process. So I have to sit back in gratitude all the time.
No, and Shazia, with like your story, I mean, your films and the kind of topics that you're, you know, speaking about, these are so important. And you're right, a lot of them, you know, we've had lots of conversations about how, you know, we want to be able to challenge the stereotypes. We want to be able to bring out those topics that are taboo and really speak about them and give them voice, and, you know, give those who perhaps don't, you know, may not have a voice, that platform, right? So that's so essential. And so I want to just, you know, really thank you both for all that you're doing. I mean, do you have any sort of, you know, advice that you'd like to give to our audience in particular about, you know, what they could do potentially to use their voices?
Well, I think stepping into their identity, understanding who they are, following through in faith, and having positive voices around them to encourage them, and also to take a chance and to get involved. I think that's the most beautiful thing about being a human being, is to have the human experience. And you do that not in isolation, but with people around you. So you're able to appreciate people and people appreciating you. And I think that's just a wonderful thing, bringing to the community and the community giving back to you. It's a wonderful gift.
I think the thing is just do it. If you want to tell a story, whatever your art form, if you, yeah, I mean, if it's the film and if you're just starting out, even if you want to start off with a phone camera, just do it. Just put your voice out there.
Right.
Don't worry about any judgments at that time. Like if you're making something and you're worrying about how people will react when they're watching it, then you can't make it. Just put it out there. And don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't do this.
Right.
You can't do this because you're a woman, you can't do this because you have an accent, you can't do this because you're an immigrant, you can't do this because you're Muslim, or whatever else they tell you. Just don't let anyone tell you that you cannot do it. You can, and just do it. And as Nikki said, once you start doing it, you will attract a group of people who will support you. You will attract like-minded people, and they will become your allies and your family, and that will feel so liberating and so much better than sticking with people who you thought were yours but told you not to do it. So go ahead and create whatever is it that you want to create.
Yeah,
That's great.
no, thank you. I mean, this has been really wonderful. I just want to take an opportunity to thank you both for being here, for sharing your stories, for doing all the amazing work that you're doing. It requires a lot of courage. I know, when we talk about these issues, when we talk about, really pushing the envelope, that there's always going to be those haters that are going to, try to pull us down. But, you've been resilient and you continue to push the envelope. So thank you for doing that. And thank you to our viewers for watching today. This has been a really great show. The most important message that I'd like to leave you with here today is just to say, just do it. Like Shazia said, right? Nikki said, be transformational. Allow yourself to feel, you look inside yourself and really think about what it is that you want to contribute to society, to the world. How can you make your mark? How can you make a difference? And don't be afraid to just, go ahead and do what you feel is the right thing to do for you. Everybody's story is different. Everybody's experiences are different, and what they can contribute is different, but we all have it inside of ourselves to make that difference. So until next week, I'll see you then. Take care.